Aside from the primal fears, the Gun Devil is one of the most powerful devils in Chainsaw Man. I mean, that's just indisputable. Even Makima, one of the strongest devils in the series as one of the Four Horsemen, would have been decimated by just 20% of the Gun Devil if it weren't for her contract with the Prime Minister. So if you're looking at the title of this video and think this is just going to be me calling the Gun Devil a fraud, then no, that's not what this is about. So I've made quite a few videos talking about power scaling this series, and when scaling a lot of the more powerful characters, the Gun Devil always comes up as a baseline minimum for anyone stronger than it. Now, what am I talking about? Well, if you've spent any amount of time in the power scaling community for Chainsaw Man, then I'm sure you've seen this brought up. In Chapter 13, we get our first proper introduction to what the Gun Devil is actually capable of. Makima tells a story about how in just 5 minutes, the Gun Devil traveled all over the world and killed a little under 1.2 million people. The logic goes that in order for the Gun Devil to accomplish this worldwide travel, then it would have to be going hundreds of times faster than the speed of sound. And for the longest time, we had little reason to doubt this kind of calculation. But a lot has happened since then, and this story has been contradicted to hell and back. So let's get into it and talk about why the Gun Devil is probably weaker than you think. Now, in order to really get into this, we have to understand what those contradictions are. In Chapter 13, Makima states that guns were being heavily invested in so that people could better fight devils. This led to a rise in crimes related to the weapon, so there ended up being a lot of media coverage on this, and fear of guns drastically rose. And the straw that broke the camel's back was a big terror attack in the US. That very same day, the Gun Devil appeared. Specifically in Chapter 12, she says it first appeared in the United States. We then get an entire page dedicated to where it went, how long it spent there, and how many people were no longer alive after the fact. It was then never seen again. Because of this whole deal, devils themselves became stronger, and in response, control over guns and their related news were put in place. Now, we all know that this story is a lie. That's not exactly a hot take. In fact, this lie probably isn't anything special that Makima came up with. This is probably just the public story that everyone knows. She just has to tell it to Denji in order to manipulate him because he never had a formal education. He wouldn't know about this stuff. It's very likely that everything Makima said in the beginning of this story about rising crime and fear did happen. We can also believe that the Gun Devil's first attack did happen in the US, because how would a person even lie about that? But when looking at her story side by side with the story we get later in Chapter 73, a lot of stuff falls apart. She starts this story by saying that when the Soviet army sighted the Gun Devil for the first time, it had already been taken down by someone else and was in an unconscious state. And currently, the Gun Devil is split up between different countries, like the United States having 20% of its body. The rest is scattered around the world with different devils. From this point on, governments would secretly facilitate the manufacture and spread of guns because this could only increase the Gun Devil's power, so countries in possession of its flesh would also have greater power. Now, already a notable contradiction is that the Gun Devil was not actually first sighted in the US, but actually by the Soviet army. And it was not in the context of an attack, but instead it was already defeated by someone or something else. The important thing is that this event would have to be before the attack 13 years ago. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense that they would be attacked 13 years ago, and then later on have their first sighting of the Gun Devil. Since part 1 of Chainsaw Man takes place in 1997, the Gun Devil's attack would have been in the year 1984. In our real-life timeline, the Soviet Union was formed in the 1920s, so there's a good gap in time when this first sighting by the Soviets could have happened. Now let's talk about what actually happened in those 5 minutes 13 years ago. Somehow these different countries had their own piece of the Gun Devil, and for some reason it was used. This means that the massacre 13 years ago was not done by the whole Gun Devil, but each attack was done by different pieces of the Gun Devil. What most likely happened is some country enacted their their attack. Since the first publicly known appearance happened in the United States and the Soviet Union were the first to get their hands on the Gun Devil's power, I'm willing to bet that this first attack was done on the US by the Soviets. There is the obvious historical precedent after all, but aside from that, the US attack had the highest death toll and the Soviet Union had the biggest piece of the Gun Devil at 28% of the total. So once this first attack happened, everyone who had a piece of the Gun Devil did the Chainsaw Man equivalent of the nuclear option and started using their piece to retaliate. And once the damage was done, these countries likely started focusing on maintaining the influence of guns illegally in order to increase their Gun Devil piece's power. So if we go with this, then this completely debunks the idea that the Gun Devil was going around at massively hypersonic speeds and attacking people. This seriously downgrades how fast the upper tier of Chainsaw Man characters are. This is even a lot more consistent with how the Gun Devil attack is presented. Instead of traveling around the world, these Gun Devil pieces are likely being summoned directly into their target location. This even seems to be the case in the original description of events. It never says that the Gun Devil spent these 5 minutes traveling around the world, that's just adding up how much time it spent in each country. So from the beginning, this way of calculating its speed was seriously flawed. This is even directly shown to us later when we see the Gun Devil actually fight. In chapter 74, Makima says that she's waiting. We soon find out she is waiting for the Gun Devil to arrive, sent by whatever country her activities were leaked to. We then see the US president make a contract with his 20% of the Gun Devil, and then suddenly the Gun Devil is there in Japan, ready to attack. There is no implied passage of time or anything like that, the Gun Devil is just there. This is also a lot more consistent with how a devil is usually summoned to attack than it is with the Gun Devil just flying over to Japan. Only after that do we get any confirmation of it physically moving around, as the narrator tells us it is advancing towards Makima. So with all of this evidence in mind, that original method of power scaling the Gun Devil just really doesn't hold up to newer evidence. The only real counter-argument I can think of is the scene in chapter 13 when Makima says that the flesh pieces are everywhere because the Gun Devil is so fast. But even in this case, the wording is very uncertain about this idea. I think it's a lot more likely that whatever crazy fight resulted in the Gun Devil being defeated is the actual cause of its flesh being so spread out. Now, this is a real downgrade to the overall speed scaling of the series. That being said, while I don't believe the Gun Devil moves that fast, his bullets are insanely fast. When he fights Makima, we get the exact time frame for everything he does, such as when he stops shooting and starts attacking Makima at exactly 3:18:25, and we can already see bullets reaching her location at 3:18:26 only a second later. And keep in mind, they were 500 kilometers apart when this happened, so those bullets traveled 500 kilometers in 1 second. That would require a speed of over 1,000 times the speed of sound. Plus, all this means that the Gun Devil is actually a lot more powerful than we once thought. Instead of the whole Gun Devil doing that much damage, those were actually just individual pieces back then. So yeah, maybe in a couple ways it's a lot stronger than you thought. Gotta love a twist ending. But yeah, that's the video. At the end of the day, you don't have to believe my interpretation of what actually happened. The point is that the original description we got has to be wrong, and so it isn't usable for power scaling. Do what you want with the rest. If I missed some crucial details, do please enlighten me in the comments below though. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to get the most accurate assessment of the series. And if you enjoyed the video or found it interesting, feel free to like and subscribe and still shoot me a comment, it all helps the channel along. But before signing off, it's time to talk about this video's sponsor, me. I already made a video talking about it, but for the past few months, I have been producing an animation of Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen versus Makima from Chainsaw Man. One of the coolest matchups of modern shonen, and it's our intention to show it. It'll be in traditional 2D animation as you're all used to with both shows, and this is backed by some amazing animators that I have brought onto the project. But unfortunately, we can't do this alone, so if you want to support the project, sign up for the Patreon to get a look behind the scenes like character sheets, storyboards, and all kinds of fun stuff. Or if you want to donate a specific amount, we also have a Ko-Fi available, links in the description below. If this all sounds cool to you, be sure to check them out and keep up with the updates. Also, shout out to our Honored One tier patrons. Thank you so much for your support. But that's the video, so take care and have a good one.